Do you love action, adventure, cute kohais trained to fight nasty monsters and protect the village, all the while being attacked in very inappropriate ways? Because plot. No, no, real plot. No, there's there's actually a reason why these girls are being attacked in the way they get attacked. This little midget guy at the very end explains everything. No, there's real. Okay, yes, it's all for Ecchi. We know it's all for Ecchi. Immoral Guild, or Futoku no Guild, the best show that unfortunately was not released in the West, and there's an obvious reason for that. A show that pushes the envelope so far that nobody wanted to touch it over here in the West. I liken it to Interspecies reviewers, where again, this time they figured it out. Nobody, no matter if it's censored version, is it gonna fly over here. Which is very unfortunate because, like Interspecies reviewers, this is easily one of the best ecchi, raunchy comedies out there. But this is my review on Immoral Guild, a 12-episode series that aired in the fall 2022 anime season, so let's jump right into it. Immoral Guild opens up in a fantasy world with magic and swords, and we follow Kikuru, who's currently trying to quit his job at the Adventure Guild. He's been doing it for so long. He trained ever since he was a kid to be the best fighter ever, and he realized he kind of wasted his youth. So he wants to retire and pursue love. Well, unfortunately, there's nobody to really take up the gavel. He's really the only guy that's handling most everything. So the guild lady in a panic's like, before you do that, we have some people that are coming in to start working here. Train them and see if things change for you. And yes, enter Hitomu, a fresh off the training camp girl ready to learn how to be an adventurer. But there's one big problem. Hitomu is terrible at her job. She has really great senses. She's of the beast folk, so she has really good senses. She can tell where monsters are at, but when it comes to actually fighting, she's terrible. So Kikuru's kind of forced to have to stick around and train her and get to a point where he's comfortable of, handing off his job to somebody else. And yes, this gets even worse, as every single girl that suddenly shows up at the Adventure Guild need to be trained by him, and again, they're all really terrible. But there is one really strange thing that's happening, and this is where we get into the spicy stuff. For some reason, the monsters, when they get a hold of these girls, they aren't harming them, so to speak. They're just, I don't know, liking the taste of their mana. Which, yes, technically does get into a plot line. There's supposedly a reason why all these monsters don't want to harm these girls, but rather do really inappropriate things to them and lick their mana. And that's basically the gist of Immoral Guild. This the guy that's really good at his job, trying to train people who are terrible at their jobs. And every one of these girls that end up joining Kikuru's party and train under him all sort of have their own class that they go under. Hitomu is more like a monk-type class. You have Maidana, who is a healer, Tatsuko, who's a mage, and Hanabata, who's more like a straight warrior. So my thoughts on Immoral Guild. I really... Don't hold this against me. I really love this show. It was absolutely fantastic. Like I said before, I sort of liken it to Interspecies reviewers, where it is getting way over the borderline ecchi to, again, the realms of H-type stuff. But at the same time, there's a lot of comedy surrounding it, and it's really going for something that's almost grounded in reality. Like they're trying to explain things. So it's not ecchi and borderline H for the sake of doing that. It gives you this because you want this, but at the same time, it's trying to put comedy and writing around it. And I think they balance that really well. I had a lot of fun watching this show, and honestly, coming into it, I figured it was just going to be a simple, yes, ecchi. And while, yes, comedy is subjective, and some people are going to get more mileage out of the comedy while others not, it really worked for me. And I think that's because it's playing off of the fantasy tropes. A lot of the comedy centered around adventure guilds and taking jobs and doing terrible at them. But additionally, you have a lot of this comedy that's centered around the harem aspect. And the idea of Kikuru being put into all these very inappropriate situations. Every one of the girls having their own archetypes, it plays into those archetypes as well, but it does it in an almost creative way and also kind of evolves the formula. While we are seeing a decline in the appearance of harem ecchi shows, this one's very refreshing in the idea that not only is it doing the harem ecchi show, but it's evolving the formula and doing something new with it. It's a very refreshing take on the genre. For example, recently we had the Mother of Goddess Dormitory, which was an ecchi harem comedy. I didn't really feel like it did much with it. And the unfortunate thing that one had is that the main character was so young, he was so displaced from reality. He was doing the main character going, whoa, 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 and running away. Whereas Kikuru is refreshing in the idea that at first he's standoffish to the Ecchi. Over time, it's almost as if he's just trying to hide that he likes the Ecchi. A really prime example is we have this whole moment where they're trying to cure Hana of her rage, her berserking ability. And Kikuru ends up being sandwiched between her and the guild lady. And the guild lady's trying to get him to say that he doesn't like it. And there's this long dramatic pause before the guild lady says, Kikuru? And he's like, oh yes, I really don't like this. It plays it really well because it's refreshing in the idea that he's not the typical, oh no, I don't like this. He's just kind of like, yeah, I kind of like this, but I guess I shouldn't like this. And again, this kind of extends to all the other characters. They have this whole sequence where he's in this doctor's office and he's undercover as the doctor because he was kind of forced into doing it. And he's doing the physical for all the girls. And it kind of turns into this comparison thing of each one of the girls' sizes. And even with a character like Tuxiko, who's not really overly sized, he still acknowledges the perfection of it. It does a really great job of kind of balancing multiple types of ecchi comedy, adventure comedy, and yes, each of the archetypes of the characters, spending time with each one of them, that way nothing really gets old. Hitomu and her pure nature, and yet her being extremely klutzy. Maidana being very selfish at first because she charges people for heals, and almost her tsundere nature. Toxico, who I absolutely adore. Toxico, best girl. Easily best girl. And she's got more of a dark look on things. She's very lazy. She gets tired very quickly. They have like this whole segment with her and Kikuru having to fight the spider, which was just super good. Hanabata and her special trait in her berserking that pretty much makes her into this lovey drunk. And yes, even Inome, the guild lady, and yes, her stature. She kind of plays into the milk joke. And then the very late introduction of Noma, who is a very cute elf. I'll just say that. Without a doubt, like I said earlier, this is easily my favorite ecchi comedy since Interspecies Reviewers. So if you love that series, definitely, unfortunately, go out of your way to try to find this in certain sites. Because as I said earlier, even though they do have a stickered, censored version, I think it was even still too much for Western licensors. I was kind of hoping that High Dive would at least pick it up, but it's just really good. I loved every single episode of it. It had one of the most funniest moments in comedy this year. Like poor Menina cooking a certain part of a bear and then later on having to be told what that part is. It's just too good. I love it to death. I highly suggest it. I have to say as well, it's visually very unique. The character designs are fantastic, by far. I love all the character designs. Each one of the Kohais were super cute. I loved each one of them for their own reasons. And while it's not super highly animated, I think there was a couple action scenes that they pulled it off really well. But again, I think it all comes down to animation and character designs. And yes, technically when you're dealing with an ecchi show, having those really spot-on character designs really sells the ecchi. And that's my review of Immoral Guild. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as always. If you did, make sure to hit that like button down below, comment, let me know what you thought of the series if you're going to be checking it out. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, we have a Patreon link, a tips link, and a super thanks button down below. Greatly appreciate everybody it does, and y'all take care.